The champagne glass slipped from her fingers, crystal shattering against marble as his voice cut through the wedding reception's gentle hum.
Simone?
3 years, 7 months, and 16 days. That's how long it had been since she'd heard Dominic Cross say her name. 3 years since he'd chosen his empire over everything they'd built together. 3 years since she'd lost the only piece of him she had left. Alone in a hospital room, her phone filled with unanswered calls to a man who'd made it clear she no longer mattered. Now here he stood, impossibly handsome in his tailored tuxedo, staring at her like she was a ghost he'd never expected to see again. "Hello, Dominic." She forced her voice steady, her face carefully blank despite the storm raging beneath her skin. "Congratulations on the Patterson acquisition. I hear Cross Industries is unstoppable these days." His amber eyes, God, she'd forgotten how intense they were, searched her face with an urgency that made her throat tight. Small talk? After everything? What would you prefer? She bent to collect the larger shards of glass, grateful for the excuse to break eye contact. That I cause a scene at our friend's wedding? That I tell you about the times I... She stopped abruptly, the secret clawing at her throat. "The times you what, Simone?" She straightened, depositing the glass on a passing server's tray. "Nothing. Ancient history." She turned to leave, but his hand caught her wrist, gentle but insistent. "You look different. 3 years will do that." She pulled away from his touch, from the heat of his skin that still felt achingly familiar. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding to enjoy." "Wait." But she was already walking away, her heart hammering against her ribs, the weight of what he didn't know pressing down on her chest like a physical thing. Have you ever carried a secret so devastating that just the sight of one person could make your carefully constructed world crumble? Have you ever lost something so precious that the pain of it changed who you are at your core? Tonight's story is about the secrets we keep to survive, the losses that reshape us, and what happens when the past refuses to stay buried. If you've ever wondered whether some truths are better left unspoken, or whether real healing requires the courage to face our deepest wounds, stay with me. This story might just change how you think about forgiveness, second chances, and the price we pay for the choices we make. If this story moves you, please subscribe to Tales of the Heart and leave a comment about a time when your past collided with your present in unexpected ways. Now let me take you back to where it all began. 4 years earlier, Simone Washington stood in the lobby of Cross Industries, her leather portfolio pressed against her chest like armor. At 34, she'd built a reputation as one of Chicago's most innovative interior designers, specializing in corporate spaces that somehow managed to feel both professional and welcoming. Landing Cross Industries as a client would be the breakthrough her small firm needed. "Ms. Washington?" A polished assistant approached. "Mr. Cross will see you now." Simone had prepared to pitch Roland Cross, the legendary founder and CEO. What she hadn't prepared for was the man who stood when she entered the executive suite, younger than expected, maybe late 30s, with warm brown skin a shade darker than her own, close-cropped hair, and those striking amber eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Ms. Washington, Dominic Cross." His handshake was confident without being aggressive. "My father had to fly to New York unexpectedly. He asked me to take this meeting." "I hope everything's all right." She recalibrated quickly, adjusting her mental approach. "Just business." His smile reached his eyes. "He speaks highly of your preliminary concepts. I've been reviewing them myself and have some thoughts if you don't mind discussing them with the second-in-command rather than the CEO himself." "Not at all. From what I've read, you're the innovation architect behind Cross Industries' expansion into sustainable technologies. Hardly just a second-in-command." He looked surprised, then pleased. "You've done your homework. I never walk into a meeting unprepared, Mr. Cross. Dominic, please. He gestured toward a seating area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. And I appreciate thoroughness. It's a quality that seems increasingly rare. For the next 90 minutes, they discussed her vision for the new headquarters. Dominic asked sharp questions, challenged her assumptions thoughtfully, and offered insights that revealed genuine understanding of how physical space influences company culture and employee well-being. You know more about design than most of my clients who claim to know what they want, Simone observed as she showed him her digital mock-ups. My mother was an artist before she passed, he replied, his fingers tracing the digital outline of her proposed structure. Some of my earliest memories are of visiting her studio, watching her create. She died when I was 15, but I've maintained an interest. The personal revelation, offered so naturally, shifted something between them. I'm sorry about your mother. I lost mine to breast cancer when I was 26. Understanding flickered in his eyes. Heart disease for us. He paused. It changes you, doesn't it? Makes you see time differently. Yes. The simple acknowledgement created an unexpected intimacy, like you're always aware of how fragile everything is. A moment of silence stretched between them, charged with unexpected connection. Dominic cleared his throat. I've kept you past your scheduled time. Let me walk you out. At the elevator, he handed her his card. I'd like to continue this conversation. Perhaps over dinner? Strictly to discuss the project, of course. The slight hesitation in his voice told Simone this wasn't entirely about business. She should say no. Mixing professional and personal was a recipe for complications. But something about Dominic Cross intrigued her. His intelligence, his emotional availability when discussing his mother, the way he seemed genuinely interested in her ideas rather than just her appearance. I should tell you, she said carefully, that I have a policy about keeping business relationships professional. Understood. He looked disappointed but respectful. However, she continued, I'm willing to make an exception, provided we're clear that my firm's proposal stands on its own merits, regardless of whether we connect personally. His smile was warm and genuine. I wouldn't have it any other way. Tomorrow night, there's a place in West Loop with excellent food and quiet corners for conversation. Tomorrow works. Walking to the train afterward, Simone wondered if she'd just made a brilliant decision or a catastrophic mistake. Something told her Dominic Cross wasn't a man you walked away from unchanged. Dinner exceeded every expectation. The restaurant was perfect, intimate without being presumptuous, elegant without being stuffy. Dominic arrived exactly on time, his burgundy shirt and dark slacks suggesting he'd gone home to change, which touched her more than it should have. You look beautiful, he said simply when he spotted her at the table. Thank you. You clean up nicely yourself. As promised, they started with business. His father's vision for the headquarters, Cross Industries' rapid expansion into tech sustainability, the company culture they wanted the new space to reflect. But as appetizers arrived and wine was poured, the conversation drifted into more personal territory. So, why interior design? He asked. Was it your mother's influence? Actually, no. My mother taught literature at Northwestern. Simone smiled at the memory. My father's the contractor, still running Washington construction on the south side. I grew up on his job sites, fascinated by how buildings went from concrete shells to finished spaces. But I was also drawn to the artistic side, the way good design can make people feel safe or inspired or connected. That's what drew me to your work, Dominic said, leaning forward. Your designs tell stories. They're not just aesthetically pleasing. They seem to understand something essential about human needs. That's exactly what I aim for. She felt seen in a way that was both thrilling and slightly terrifying. A space should serve people, not just impress them. My father could learn from that philosophy. A shadow crossed his face. He tends to view everything, including spaces, as power statements. And you don't? I think true power comes from creating value, not just displaying wealth. He paused. Though I'm still learning how to lead with that philosophy while competing for his approval. The vulnerability in that admission made her chest tighten. Competing? He's retiring next year. 3 of us are being considered to replace him as CEO. Me, my cousin Marcus, who runs our West Coast operations, and our CFO, Diane Chen, who's been with the company since before I was born. That must create tension. That's putting it mildly. He smiled ruefully. Family dinners have become board meetings. But enough about cross-dynasty politics. Tell me about your vision for spaces that heal. That Montreal hotel you designed. The one with the indoor gardens integrated throughout. What inspired that? By the time they declined dessert and split a 3rd bottle of wine, 4 hours had disappeared. Simone couldn't remember the last time a first date, was this a date, had felt this effortless, this intellectually and emotionally engaging. I should get going, she said reluctantly. Early site visit tomorrow. Of course. May I see you home? She studied him, looking for ulterior motives and finding only genuine interest. All right. Outside, he hailed a rideshare, and they traveled to her Bronzeville neighborhood in easy conversation about Chicago's architecture, their favorite hidden gems in the city, the ways gentrification was reshaping both their childhood neighborhoods. At her door, he stood at a respectful distance. Thank you for tonight, Simone. I enjoyed getting to know the designer behind the brilliant proposals. I enjoyed it too. More than I expected to, honestly. High praise. His eyes crinkled with amusement. I'd like to see you again. Not to discuss headquarters or business, just to see you. The directness was refreshing. What about your policy on mixing business and pleasure? I think, he said, stepping slightly closer, that some people are worth breaking policies for. When he kissed her, gentle but sure, a question and an answer all at once. Simone felt something shift inside her, a door opening that she'd kept carefully locked since her last relationship ended badly 2 years ago. Good night, Simone Washington, he murmured against her lips. Good night, Dominic Cross. As she watched him return to the waiting car, she touched her fingers to her mouth, already knowing that this man was going to complicate her carefully managed life in ways she couldn't predict. True to his word, Dominic called the next day, and the day after. For the next month, they maintained careful boundaries during business hours. Cross Industries officially selected her firm, with Simone as lead designer, while exploring their undeniable chemistry in the evenings. He took her to a jazz club in Hyde Park where they talked until 2 a.m. She showed him her favorite Frank Lloyd Wright buildings, explaining what made each revolutionary. They discovered shared loves of Toni Morrison novels, deep dish pizza debates, and classic Motown. I've never been good at letting people in, Simone admitted one evening as they walked along the lakefront trail, the city lights reflecting off the water. My work has always come first. Relationships always seem too complicated, too risky. I understand that completely. His hand found hers naturally. After my mother died, my father became consumed by the company. I learned early that work was how you proved your value, how you created something that would outlast you, but it's lonely. It is. She stopped walking, turning to face him. But this, us, doesn't feel lonely. No. He cupped her face gently. It doesn't. 3 months in, after attending a Cross Industries board gala where he introduced her proudly to everyone, Dominic asked her to his penthouse for the first time. Standing in his living room with its stunning views of the Chicago skyline, she felt both nervous and ready. This is significant, she said, as he poured wine. "It is," he agreed, crossing to where she stood by the windows. "Which is why I need to tell you something before we go any further." Her heart stuttered. "What?" "I love you, Simone." His eyes held hers steadily. "I know it's fast, and I'm not expecting you to say it back, but being with you has shown me what was missing from my life. You make me want to be better than the man my father expects, someone who values connection over conquest, meaning over money." The raw honesty undid her. "I love you too," she whispered, surprised by how true the words felt. "I didn't expect this. Didn't think I wanted it, but here we are." His kiss was different this time, deeper, more certain. When he lifted her into his arms and carried her to his bedroom, Simone felt herself surrendering to something she'd protected herself against for years. The terrifying, exhilarating freedom of being fully known and fully loved. What she didn't know was how quickly it would all fall apart. The beginning of the end came on a Tuesday in March. They were having lunch at their favorite spot, a soul food restaurant in Bronzeville where the owner knew them both by name, when Dominic's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression tightening. "My father," he said. "The CEO announcement has been moved up. He's making his decision next month instead of next fall." Why the change? His doctors found some concerning markers during his annual physical. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but enough to make him want succession settled sooner. Dominic pushed food around his plate. "He's assigning each candidate a final project. Mine is securing the Vancouver expansion, landing the Morrison account that we've been pursuing for 18 months. That's huge. It's everything." He looked up, his eyes troubled. "The next 6 weeks are going to be intense. I'll be traveling constantly, working insane hours. I hate that it's happening now just when we—" "It's okay." She covered his hand with hers. "This is what you've been working toward your whole life. We'll figure it out." "Have I mentioned that I love you?" "Not in the last hour." She smiled, trying to lighten his worry. Completely unacceptable. But as the weeks progressed, Simone felt him slipping away, not all at once, just gradually, like sand through fingers. His texts became shorter, more distracted. Calls happened later at night, when he was exhausted. The 2 weekends he wasn't traveling, he spent in his home office, buried in proposals and projections. She told herself it was temporary, that once the CEO decision was made, they'd find their rhythm again. She threw herself into her own work, finalizing the Cross Industries headquarters design while trying not to think about how much she missed him. Then came the morning that changed everything. She woke feeling nauseated, a sensation she initially dismissed as stress or bad takeout. But when it persisted for 3 days, accompanied by unusual fatigue and tender breasts, a different possibility entered her mind. The drugstore pregnancy test was positive. So was the second one. And the third, pregnant. 6 weeks, if her calculations were correct. Simone sat on her bathroom floor, the positive tests lined up on the tile, emotions warring within her. Shock, definitely. Fear. But underneath those, a surprising flutter of something that felt like joy. She'd never seriously considered motherhood. Her career had always been her priority. Children a vague, someday maybe possibility. But now, staring at those 2 pink lines, she found herself imagining it. A baby with Dominic's eyes, a child who would be loved by both of them, a future that suddenly felt more concrete than any she'd envisioned. She called his office immediately. "I need to speak with Dominic. It's important." "I'm sorry, Ms. Washington." His new assistant, someone Simone hadn't met, sounded professionally sympathetic. "Mr. Cross is in Vancouver for the Morrison meetings. He's requested no interruptions except emergencies." "This is an emergency." "I'll pass along the message, but I can't guarantee when he'll be able to return your call." Simone tried his cell. It went to voicemail. She texted, "Call me when you can. Important, not work-related." Hours passed, then a full day. Finally, a text came back. Swamped. Everything okay? Can we talk this weekend? This wasn't something to tell him via text. Yes, but we need to talk soon. In person. Vancouver deal closing Friday. I'll come straight to yours after I land. Promise. She spent the rest of the week in a strange liminal space, her hand frequently drifting to her still flat stomach, already talking to the tiny life growing inside her. Your daddy is brilliant and kind, she whispered one night. He's going to love you so much. We both are. But Friday came and went with no Dominic. She texted, called, left voicemails. Nothing. On Saturday morning, a courier arrived at her door. Inside the envelope, a single key, the one to Dominic's penthouse that he'd given her 2 months earlier, and a typed letter on Cross Industries letterhead. Simone, I've been doing a lot of thinking this week about my priorities and what the CEO position will require. With my father's announcement coming Monday, I need to focus entirely on Cross Industries and the responsibilities ahead. What we had was special, but the timing isn't right for anything serious. I need to be able to dedicate myself fully to leading this company forward, without distractions. Your firm will continue as lead on the headquarters project, of course. Your work is exceptional and speaks for itself. I'm sorry for any pain this causes. Dominic. She read it 3 times, each reading making it feel less real and more devastating. Distractions. He'd called what they had, called her, a distraction. And he'd ended it via typed letter delivered by courier, like she was a business matter to be efficiently resolved. For a long time, Simone simply sat there, the letter in one hand, her other hand pressed protectively against her stomach. Then, finally, she called his direct line one more time. This time, someone answered. Mr. Cross's office. I need to speak with Dominic. Tell him it's Simone. It's urgent. A pause. I'm sorry, Ms. Washington. Mr. Cross has asked that all future communications go through appropriate professional channels. For matters regarding the headquarters project, please contact David Kumar in facilities. For anything else. Simone hung up. The message was clear. He didn't want to hear from her. Whatever excuse his assistant might offer, Dominic had made his choice, and she wasn't part of it. The next morning, every business news outlet announced it. Dominic Cross named CEO of Cross Industries, effective immediately. Youngest CEO in the company's 50-year history. Visionary leader ready to take the helm. And Simone Washington, pregnant with his child, had been cleanly excised from his carefully curated life. If you've ever been abandoned at your most vulnerable moment, hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. In our next part, we'll see how Simone faces an impossible choice alone, and what happens when tragedy strikes with no one there to catch her. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next in this emotional journey. For 2 weeks, Simone tried. She called, emailed, even went to Cross Industries in person. Each attempt was met with the same polite barrier. Mr. Cross is unavailable. Please direct inquiries through proper channels. Finally, an email arrived from Cross Industries' legal department. Ms. Washington, it has come to our attention that you have made multiple attempts to contact Mr. Cross regarding non-project matters. As your professional relationship has concluded, we request that all future communications be limited to appropriate business channels. That's when Simone stopped trying. If Dominic thought she was harassing him, trying to cling to a relationship he'd ended, then she would handle this alone. She was 12 weeks along when she woke to sharp cramping and spotting. By the time she reached the ER, the cramping had intensified, the bleeding had increased, and she knew. She just knew what was happening. I'm sorry, the doctor said after the ultrasound, her voice gentle. There's no heartbeat. Your body is beginning to miscarry. We'll monitor you to ensure it completes naturally without complications. Simone heard the words through a fog. No heartbeat. The baby she'd been talking to, planning for, already loving, gone, just like that. Is there someone we can call? A nurse asked later after they'd moved her to a private room. Partner? Family. No, Simone whispered. There's no one. And so she faced the loss of her child entirely alone, in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and broken dreams, with only medical professionals cycling through to check her vital signs and offer clinical comfort. They discharged her the next morning with follow-up instructions and a pamphlet about grief support groups. She took a car service home, climbed into bed, and allowed herself 24 hours of complete breakdown. She cried for the baby she'd never hold, for the future she'd briefly imagined, for the man she'd loved who'd proven himself unworthy of that love. Then she got up, showered, and began rebuilding. The first step was severing all remaining ties to Dominic Cross. She called her partner at the firm and explained, without details, that due to a personal health issue, she needed to step back from the Cross Industries project immediately. Are you sure? Marcus asked, concern evident. That's your signature project. I'm sure. I need a clean break. Next, she contacted her real estate agent. I want to sell my condo. And I need to find a new place. Different neighborhood. Fresh start. Within 6 weeks, she'd moved from Bronzeville to a light-filled loft in Pilsen, restructured her client portfolio to focus on residential and boutique commercial projects, rather than corporate headquarters, and begun the slow process of rebuilding her life around the absence at its center. She told no one about the pregnancy or the miscarriage. Her business partner and friends attributed her withdrawal from the Cross project to the breakup, which was true enough. The fuller truth, the child she'd carried and lost, the grief she navigated alone, remained her private burden. On what would have been her due date, Simone took the day off and visited the Lincoln Park Conservatory. She sat among the orchids and ferns, the humid air thick with the scent of growing things, and silently acknowledged the baby, who had existed only briefly, but had changed everything. I would have loved you, she whispered to the quiet greenhouse air. I did love you. Time moved forward. Simone rebuilt her life deliberately, carefully. Her firm gained recognition for its innovative residential designs. She developed a reputation for creating spaces that felt both safe and inspiring, that honored people's need for beauty and functionality in equal measure. She dated occasionally, brief, pleasant relationships that never deepened into anything serious. Part of her remained walled off, protected against the kind of devastating loss she'd experienced. It was safer this way, she told herself. More controlled. For 3 years and 7 months, Simone successfully maintained this careful distance from anything or anyone connected to Dominic Cross. She avoided business events where he might appear, declined invitations to galas sponsored by Cross Industries, and never looked at the new headquarters building that had been completed without her involvement. She thought she'd successfully moved on, built a life that, if not exactly happy, was at least stable and meaningful. Then came the wedding invitation that shattered her carefully constructed equilibrium. Jasmine Chen had been Simone's friend since design school, one of the few people she'd maintained close contact with through all of life's changes. When Jasmine called to announce her engagement, Simone was genuinely thrilled for her. You'll be there, right? Jasmine asked. I need you there. Of course. I wouldn't miss it. It wasn't until the formal invitation arrived that Simone noticed the connection she'd somehow overlooked. Jasmine's fiancé, Kevin Martinez, was Director of Technology Innovation at Cross Industries, which meant Dominic Cross would definitely be at the wedding. Is that going to be a problem? Jasmine asked when Simone called. I know you two have history. Simone could make an excuse, claim a schedule conflict, or she could face this ghost from her past once and for all, prove to herself that he no longer had power over her. Not a problem at all, she lied smoothly. Ancient history. The wedding day arrived clear and beautiful, late September sunshine warming the Chicago Botanic Garden where the ceremony was held. Simone wore a midnight blue dress that hugged her curves, her natural hair styled in elegant twists that framed her face. She managed to avoid Dominic during the ceremony, though she felt his presence like a magnetic pull she had to actively resist. Only during the cocktail hour before the reception did their paths inevitably cross. She was examining a carefully arranged succulent display, a designer's habit, analyzing aesthetics even at social events, when his voice came from behind her. "Simone." The sound of her name in his voice hit her like a physical blow. She turned slowly, forcing her expression into polite neutrality, even as her heart hammered. He looked good, too good. The years had added distinguished touches of gray at his temples, lines of experience around his eyes. Success suited him, or maybe it was just that he'd always been handsome, and time had only refined that beauty. "Dominic," she kept her voice even, "congratulations on Cross Industries' expansion into healthcare tech." "Impressive work." His brows furrowed. "Small talk? After everything? What would you prefer? That I make a scene at Jasmine's wedding?" "I'd prefer—" He stopped himself. "You look incredible." "Thank you." She turned back to the succulents, hoping he'd take the dismissal. He didn't. "Can we talk?" "There's a terrace through those doors." Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, but maybe this was necessary. A final conversation to close a chapter that had never properly ended. 5 minutes. Outside, away from the crowd, Dominic studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "You're different. 3 years changes a person. It's more than that. There's a distance in you that wasn't there before." He stepped closer. "What happened, Simone? After I ended things?" The audacity of the question nearly broke her careful control. "What happened?" "You mean besides being dumped via courier like an inconvenient business matter?" "I deserve that." His jaw tightened. "I handled it terribly. I was so focused on proving myself to my father, on securing the CEO position, that I convinced myself relationships were distractions I couldn't afford. I was wrong." "Yes, you were. But something else happened. Something that changed you fundamentally." He moved closer. "What aren't you telling me?" The secret pressed against her throat, demanding release. Maybe it was the wine from the reception, or the surreal quality of this conversation, or simply the weight of carrying this alone for so long. Whatever the reason, the truth came spilling out. "I was pregnant," she said, the words barely audible, "when you ended things. When I kept calling you, trying to reach you, I was carrying your child." The color drained from his face. "Pregnant?" 8 weeks along when you decided I was a distraction you couldn't afford." The old anger sparked hot in her chest. "I tried to tell you. I called, emailed, went to your office in person. You had your lawyers warn me off." "Oh God." He looked stricken. "Simone, I thought you were just... I never imagined... Would it have mattered?" The question that had haunted her for years. "If you'd known, would you have chosen differently?" "Yes." His response was immediate, vehement. "Of course it would have mattered. Whatever you think of me, I would never have abandoned my child." "Just the child's mother." He flinched. "I was an idiot. A coward. But Simone, we have a child together. That changes everything. Where is she? He? With your parents? We need to... There is no child." The words came out flat, emotionless, years of practice control keeping her voice steady. "I miscarried at 12 weeks. Alone in a hospital room, because you'd made it clear I didn't matter anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. When Simone finally looked at him, the devastation on his face mirrored what she'd felt that terrible night. You were alone, he said finally, his voice breaking. When it happened. You went through that completely alone because of me. She didn't confirm or deny. Her silence was answer enough. I'm so sorry. The words seemed painfully inadequate. More sorry than I can ever express. You should have had support, someone to help you through it. Instead, I had a legal warning and radio silence. She wrapped her arms around herself. But I survived. I rebuilt. I moved on. Did you? His gaze was too perceptive. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you built walls to contain the pain, not moved past it. Before she could respond, the terrace doors opened and Jasmine appeared. There you are! They're about to do the toasts. Simone seized the interruption gratefully. Coming. As she followed Jasmine inside, she felt Dominic's eyes on her back, felt the weight of revelations that couldn't be unsaid. For 3 years and 7 months, she'd carried this secret alone. Now it belonged to both of them, and she had no idea what that meant for either of their futures. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to Tales of the Heart. Your support helps us share stories about love, loss, and the courage it takes to heal. Remember, sometimes the most painful truths, once shared, can lead to the deepest healing. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay tuned for part 2. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you would be the first to find out when it drops. Don't forget to tell us in the comments section where you are watching from.